Lori, remember I told you I was going to show you how to repot your orchid, so I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to start with this Phalaenopsis here, and you can see it's just regular. Somebody gave this one to me, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to water it. So a little hard to do with one hand, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm going to take my orchid, and I'm going to turn the water on here, and it's kind of tepid. Actually, it's probably cold right now, but so what I'm doing, as you can see, I'm just letting the water run through it. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that all the roots get nice and wet. So I'm going to try to make sure these ones that are hanging over, they get good and wet. I'm going to try to flip it around so that the ones on this side also get a little water on them. And the reason I do this is because I want to make sure that they're good and flexible so that when we repot them and we have to kind of mash them into a new pot, or the same pot for that matter, they'll be nice and flexible and easy to do. Okay? So I'm doing this for probably, like a minute or so. And once that's done, then I'm going to let it sit for probably maybe 5 or 10 minutes so that the roots can actually absorb the water. In fact, in an ideal world, so I'm just going to let it sit there. And what I would normally do is go ahead and actually take this, let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then go ahead and actually water it again. So I'm going to pause for now. So while we're waiting for the orchid to soak up some of that water, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant it in sphagnum moss. And you can see this is New Zealand sphagnum moss. And you can get this at any good orchid supply place. And you can see I've got a variety of pots in here. And I'm going to try to cram it back into the same pot that it's in. But it may be a little bit big for it. And so what I may have to do is move it to a slightly bigger pot like this one. Because the one it's in is about like that right now. So we'll see. If it'll fit in the current one, then that's what I want to do, because that makes it easier. Okay, it's been approximately 5 minutes, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and water it again. I don't need to do quite as much, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on the sprayer this time, because it'll be easier to get all the other roots, in particular these ones that are kind of hanging over the edge here. You can see, just want to make sure that they get nice and moist. And I'm going to do this side as well. Be a little bit careful. Try to avoid getting it into the crown of the orchid itself. But that should be sufficient for our purposes. And if we look, you can see we're in a clear pot, so you can see it's got lots of roots down in here. And so my goal is for all of those to be nice and moist. So you can see these ones over here look like they've got plenty of water. These ones on the outside, maybe not as much, but that's okay. We'll make it work. All right, Lori, so I'm back. This is orchid's nice and moist. I can tell his roots should be pliable. I've got some sphagnum moss here. I'm going to put a little bit more. So I just take it out of the big bundle here. So it comes like as a bale, essentially. You can see it or not, but I'm just going to take it. I'm going to put it in here. And this is what I use for repotting it. And then, what I want to do, I'm going to take my hose here. I'm going to switch to the mist setting. And then I'm going to just mist this good. And I want to kind of work it around here. My goal is to get it moist but not really wet. I'm hoping you can see this okay. The camera's over there on the ladder and I'm over here. Alright, it's probably pretty close to what I want. Just going to spread it a little bit more. And one more little shot here, and call that good. Alright, so now I've got my moss kind of semi-moist. And the first thing I want to do, I'm going to take this orchid and take it out of this pot. And you'll see it's got a bunch of bark in here. And inside of that bark, so what they do is there's actually moss inside here, you can see. And that's how they always start these plants over in Taiwan and Korea, wherever they grow them. A lot of them come from Taiwan. So. And then what they do is the middlemen put in the bark because it's cheaper and it makes people think that this is growing in bark when in reality is it's growing in moss. And the reason is because with bark you can water it a little more often and not have to worry about it. With moss you got to be a little bit more careful. You got to let it dry out well between waterings. So you can see it's pretty easy to take all this stuff off, and you want to get as much of it off as you can off of the roots. And you can also see why I chose to get it wet, because it makes it all easier to deal with. So I'm getting off all the bark. And if you break a root or two, it's not a big deal. And orchids are much tougher than people think they are. Alright, I got a good portion of it off anyway. There's a little bit in here and there, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. Okay, so now you can see what I've got is I've got my orchid, and I've got all of his roots here. I've got the last few pieces. And if you look around, you can see, well, it seems pretty healthy. He's got lots of nice green growing tips on the roots here. He's got lots of nice solid roots, not a lot of stuff that I have to cut off. And this is the actual root, this little stringy thing right here. And this other stuff is just the outside covering that helps it retain water and moisture. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, can I put it back in its existing pot? And the answer is, yeah, I think I probably can. So that's what I want to do. So I'm going to set him down. I'm going to take this pot and I'm going to rinse it off good. And I'll just do that right here. Clean pot is a happy pot. Okay, so now I've got that. Then what I can do is I'm going to take and I'm going to make a ball with the moss here. Make the ball here, and this ball I'm going to shove right into the middle. So that it kind of goes like that. Hair in my face, but that's it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my moss and kind of put it around the outside here. And what I really want to do is I kind of want to twist it a little bit. Because the idea is that I want all the roots to be in here, in the moss. And in this case, they're pretty much in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm just going to shove it right back into the pot. See, all the roots are in. And I'm just going to kind of twist him down into here. My goal is to have my orchid nicely in there. Kind of get as much of the moss in as I can. You can see I basically got all the roots into the pot. There we go. All right. My orchid, and your orchid, when you do it, is now repotted. It's good to grow for a couple of years now. See? Easy peasy, right? And then what I'll do is I'm going to stick a tag in here and I'll note what date I repotted this. In this case, all I care about is really the month and the year. So I'll put down 5 of 21. And then in a couple of years, I can do it again. All right, Lori, hopefully that shows you just how easy it is to do. So, happy growing, and if you have questions, you know how to get hold of me. Love you, cuz.